I think there's still an attitude that only really mentally ill people need counselling, and therefore to go for counselling is an indicator that you are seriously mentally ill. Well, anyone can be temporarily thrown off balance by life circumstances.
I lost my dad last year.
When I was 16, I was diagnosed with leukemia, and I was still in treatment for this first 2 years of university.
3 losses in the same year. One in the January, one in the August, and one in the November.
I was actually here not even for a long time. It was like 11 days after I flew in after summer holidays, and he was back home.
So I had a nosebleed that didn't stop, and we had to phone the hospital, and because it wasn't a serious thing, the nosebleed, I was on the phone for about half an hour with a nurse. Eventually they told me to come to the hospital. It was about another hour there, and in the end they had to put this special packing in my nose because it was just bleeding profusely, and they decided to keep me overnight, and as a routine they obviously take your bloods, and in the morning they came back and was like, you have a blood disorder. And then the next day I was taken to the Beats in West of Scotland Cancer Centre, and that's when I was officially diagnosed.
The first in the January was my grandmother. That was pretty hard. And then the middle one in the August was my best friend David, who I'd known for a very long time. And then a friend of mine from university.
There's a massive increase in the need for counselling services. There's been a dramatic increase in the amount of students who are presenting with mental ill health in university settings, and there are a number of factors for that, but some of the statistics suggest that the under 89% of the undergraduate population are between 18 and 25. The optimum or the most prevalent age group for people to present with mental ill health is up to 25-year-olds. So nationally, the first sort of symptoms of mental health are usually evident around that age group.
I remember thinking a week before it happened, like we had just assessments, and I was thinking like, I'm gonna manage it, it's too many things. I don't have time, I have like 2 jobs, I need to make my time for everything, and it was really hard.
Adolescence, and they now think adolescent brain development continues up to the age of 26. Adolescence is a very challenging time. There's a lot of demands of the tasks of adolescence in terms of separating off from your parents, becoming more yourself, deciding what your own values and morals and principles are.
Students are up against very tight schedules and so on. There's not enough lot of time for the reconstruction of the self-concept to take place on top of all the things that they've got to do in real time.
These transitions can be very challenging, are very challenging. For people leaving school, there's a transition from school to the workplace, to college, to university, managing those transitions, and sometimes those transitions involve changing where you live, changing who you live with, moving towns, moving cities, moving countries, and sometimes a huge change of culture. So all that's going on, and then you add into that some of the challenging life events that young people can experience.
Self-concept is kind of like the background operating system that goes on, that you've developed, the kind of programming that you've developed that allows you to operate day to day without having to go back to square one every morning when you wake up. It's the kind of rule book or the set of assumptions or the system that you've developed that you operate by. And it's not a fixed thing, it's something that has to be attended to, updated as your circumstances are updated. And that happens absolutely all the time as you grow, as your circumstances change, as your needs change as a human being, then the self-concept gets readapted, gets updated if you like. And if that's happening in an incremental way, a little change here, a little change to self-concept there, that can be fine, when that process is put under stress, when the world turns out not to be the way that you developed to operate within, and a huge change is needed, some people cope, some people find that their system crashes, and that's the sort of disorder or the dis-ease that people can feel.
I used to have, in high school, I was known for having very long hair. It was almost like an afro. So I was known for that. So when I came back to school and I had no hair, people were really shocked. And so obviously they knew that I was really sick.
I was at home when my granny passed. So it was a phone call from the nursing home. That was horrific.
When I woke up on Sunday, I basically checked my phone and I had like 4 missed calls from my mom. At that point I was thinking something is wrong, because of course she usually like phone me, but she's not phoning that often. Like she just phoned once, and when I have time I phone her back.
When David passed away, it was actually my ex-boyfriend's mother who phoned me. She phoned me and went, "Rebecca, it's Susan." And I was like, "Okay, hello Susan." These were her exact words verbatim. "It's about David. He's not dead. Well, not yet, but he will be."
Just had a conversation with like, don't get scared. So that was the feeling that gave me chills, like what's going on. And she said that dad is in the hospital and he's lying in a coma because apparently a Monday before he went for a run and he collapsed. Basically they find out that half of his brain is swollen because of something, so if he would wake up, it'd have some like problem, definitely. And my dad was pretty like active. He was not drinking, no smoking, like eating healthy.
I think the stages of recovery are, first of all, acknowledging that there is something going on, that there is something that's affecting their emotional well-being or their mental health, and from that acknowledgement actually working out, probably with professional help, of what exactly is going on and what can be brought to what's going on to ease their distress and to allow them to be the best version of themselves.
In that point, like all the things about assessment which I had like weeks before, I didn't think about it anymore. Like I booked the first flight. I didn't care if I didn't have enough money or not. I booked the first flight home, and then when I was already in the airport in London, I was talking to my mom, and she was giving me this like weird answer. She was not really answering properly, and I had this bad feeling like something is not right, and she was not like replying. And then I landed in my hometown. I go home, and that was probably the worst memory which I will remember for the rest of my life, when she asked me like how long I'm gonna stay, and I said like, well, in work and in school they said they can take as much time as I will need for this. And then she said, you won't need that much time. He died today at 5.
Lastly was my friend Vincent in Sweden. He, this is the hardest one, he killed himself not long after he went home. And it was one of his friends and his brother that phoned me.
I took a year out after high school to get used to the treatment that I was going to be on during uni. Also because I just needed time. I needed time to get physically fitter again, because I'd lost like 20 kilos, so I was really thin. I was using crutches for a long time. And once I came to uni, I believe I was prepared.
It hit me so hard that of course my friends felt it as well. This is something what you usually hear from other people, but you never know how to feel when it's happening to you.
Trauma can be not only when you experience a challenging life event yourself. Trauma can come from experiencing other people's trauma, from being with people who've experienced trauma. Vicarious trauma is where we take on the experiences of other people, and it has the effect of us experiencing it as traumatic ourselves.
It was basically my closest friends who knew, but it's still if they didn't experience something like that, they can really connect. So it was mostly like grieving me and my mom first couple of weeks.
Lecturers were aware. I told them obviously. I told them at the beginning, just to be like, by the way, I have this in case I don't appear for a random lecture or whatever. And whenever I did ask for an extension, they were more than happy.
With my gran, I told uni that I just needed some time and things like that. And if I'm being honest, didn't really get much of a response out of them.
I think if support services were proactive and going to people to make them aware that the services were there and to make them easily accessible in a discreet but very accessible way, that would help uptake of services.
Universities and colleges have got a duty of care for their student population and their staff for that matter, and will have provision made for counselling to be offered, but it can be very limited.
Certainly here within UWS, we are beginning to recognise and are starting to put in place mechanisms that are about saying that all our staff, regardless of them having maybe, some of them will have a specific mental health skill, but a lot of our staff will be the people that students will cross paths with from one day to the next, whether it's residency staff, our security staff, our FMOs, cleaners, student hub, lecturing staff, staff working in kitchens. These are in catering services. These are the people that students are speaking to all the time. And it's if we can raise the awareness of our staff group so that they can recognise perhaps the students in distress and maybe just have a conversation with them, ask how they are, be confident enough to see how a student is, and equally for that student to know that staff are receptive to that opportunity, then I think we will offset a lot of these issues in a really positive way and raise the kind of agenda of mental health and well-being within the university right across the spectrum, and not just be able to say, oh, I can't do that, that's counselling services, and maybe overwhelm a service that's maybe not been able to keep pace with the numbers of people that might need it. In fact, they might not need it if there are other services round about that can maybe informally support students, but equally can then signpost them to services if they need to.
When it came to actually uni helping, it was too late. Do you know what I mean? When I found out about the services here, it was too far gone. Do you know what I mean? I'd gone down a really kind of dark path that could have gotten worse.
Not a lot of people knew, only the really close friends. Actually, I don't even think close friends that I made here knew. A lot of people only found out when I announced that I had it and that I finished my treatment.
I remember first day when I got back after 3 weeks I was in Slovakia, because I also think you kind of need to get out of there because all his things were still there. You just can't stay home. So I got back here, I wanted to I need to focus on uni. My mom was like, oh, he wouldn't want you to do that, to drop uni, you need to go in. He would like that, he was so proud, blah, blah, blah. So I just got back and I remember sitting in the library and I was crying, and I looked for no help, but basically uni help, and I wrote an email, but I never sent it.
Very rarely would students turn for professional help as a first instance. I would say it's probably quite far down the line before they might even think about it, even if they know professional help's available.
They should be comfortable with the idea of seeking support and be aware of the services that are there. If they know services are available, if services are widely advertised and are easily accessible, then they may consider them. But even if they are widely advertised and easily accessible, sometimes people blame themselves for their circumstances, think that it's their own fault, think that they're inadequate, think that they should be able to cope. And that view of themselves, which is supported by a lot of the stigma around mental health, that view of themselves can prevent them actually seeking support.
I probably would rather talk with someone who is close to me than some random person. I didn't feel like I will be able to express myself completely to a stranger.
It's not just important to talk to someone, anyone. It's really important to find someone to talk to who will understand you And it can be quite surprising who that turns out to be. Sometimes it can be a family member, a trusted family member. Sometimes it can be the best friend that you've always had, that you think knows you inside out. But actually, sometimes it turns out to be somebody completely different. Sometimes it turns out to be someone who's gone through a similar experience to you, but you didn't know before. Or sometimes it can turn out to be a cousin rather than a sister, or a friend of a friend rather than the friend that you think knows you inside out. And I don't know, I've seen that happen very, very often. People sometimes are surprised that they find a fit for who understands them, who it feels safe to talk to, and it's not who they would have predicted it might be.
With the other two, I didn't really tell them much. In fact, I don't think I told them anything because of the way everything went before. I just kind of kept it to myself. Dealing with Vincent's was horrible, because you would have thought that the uni would either have done something for him or some sort of kind of, I don't know, tribute, or would have kind of asked us as students, even if we'd finished at that point, even if we were halfway through at that point, how we were feeling, put out some sort of feeler, if you like. None of that. I'd never lost anyone that way before. And as someone who has a self-harming background, do you know what I mean, and managed to pull herself out of it, I didn't understand at the time why. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm like, I got out of it. I've known other people that got out of it, but why didn't he?
The services that we have, certainly on this campus, we have a part-time counselling service. That part-time counselling service will be, I don't think will have changed much in terms of activity, although I couldn't be sure, but there is a dramatic increase in activity in terms of the amount of students who are presenting with mental health problems. It's gone from about, some of the statistics suggest that in about 2007 there were something like 7,000 students nationally presenting with mental health, and it's now, the most recent figures suggest that that's just shy of 50,000. So services need to recognise that that's at least a 6 to 7 fold increase in students presenting with mental health problems.
Even 5 years later, Vincent's is going to take some time. Vincent's is going to take time, because even though it's now teaching me to look after my own mental health and my friends' mental health and so on and so forth, I'll never understand why.
I would make the conscious decision to not make it obvious that something was wrong. So even when I was on the steroids, and even when I was feeling depressed and down and moody, I still came to the lectures. I still tried my best to hang out.
I kind of felt alone, to be honest, because of course at home you can still like go outside, meet with the friends, but here it's all about, it become all the same, like work, another work, like job, uni, and then sometimes you go out. Then of course when you are in a work you have to pretend that you are a happy person because of customer service.
Anyone in a position of responsibility, whether they're teachers, lecturers, tutors, or employers, supervisors, managers in employment settings, would benefit from mental health awareness training, so that they can identify someone who may be at risk or who would benefit from being guided towards support.
It's quite important, I think, that they feel they're understood by the people that they speak to. Being fully heard and being fully understood and being not judged for feeling the way that they do feel by anyone is or can be very, very healing. So people who've got good support networks, good family networks, good social networks, especially if the people that they find that they can speak to are empathic to how things actually are for them, that can help. That can see people through what they need. And it's only if that fails, if only that's not really available to them, or they find the help doesn't really produce the release of tension that they're feeling, then perhaps it might be appropriate to come for professional help.
I was at the peak of the treatment. I was very depressed, very, very sad, crying, all of that. So the hospital, they arranged for a therapist to come and speak to me. And when I did, and when I saw the report that they wrote afterwards, not to criticise the therapist, but everything he wrote just was kind of obvious. Everything he wrote was just, I just kind of looked at him like, well, duh, no wonder I'm depressed, of course, like I know why I'm depressed. So that's why I didn't seek any help, and perhaps is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but I'm the kind of person that tends to deal with things on his own. I have my own ways that I know work for me.
Everyone's different, so it can be, you don't know, you really don't know. Sometimes it's surprising because sometimes the people who feel most secure in their concept of self, in who they are, and have the strongest belief in their self-confidence, sometimes they can have the knees taken from under them by a trauma, and almost that's because that in itself is a challenge to their concept of themselves as being a very strong person. It can exacerbate the issue. You know, that their self-concept is challenged even further than someone who is kind of aware that bad things can happen and I might have to adjust to it. And sometimes the very best person for them to come to is a completely anonymous and confidential counsellor, because sometimes what's going on for them, they kind of want to explore and they want to articulate so that they understand it better, but they don't want it to be around for them when they get back to their normal life. So that if you tell your friend something, it's there forever. If you tell a confidential counsellor something, then it's going to be held in confidence and it's safe.
If you don't want to talk to your friends about it, you don't want to talk to your family about it, you want to talk to someone, which sometimes helps, talk to someone that doesn't know you, talk to your lecturers. If there's a lecturer you feel comfortable with, like, I mean, if I could go back now, I would probably, I hope he doesn't see this because he'll probably laugh at me, I would go and speak to John. Like, if I could go back and talk to John Quinn, who was a lecturer that helped me through my 4th year. Without him, I would not have got through my dissertation, and he knows that because he took extra time out of his day to help me and stuff like that. If I'd known I could have spoken to John, it probably would have, do you know what I mean, helped a little bit. But the reason I didn't was because of the first experience. I just thought, what's the point? Nobody's going to listen. They will. If there's a lecturer that you trust and a lecturer you trust in, then tell them, because they also have to keep it confidential unless you tell them otherwise.
Counselling services, for me, I use counselling services with students. They're either there, or if they're not there, the student hub will take details and make appointments. And for students who don't require to be seen urgently, it does to a certain extent meet their needs. But there is that group of people who may need some support in the here and now, and sometimes it can be quite minimal support that will make the difference. But it's even just being able to provide that small amount of support and helping to ensure that a student feels a wee bit better about the pressures they'll be under for a variety of different reasons. You know, and it's not just always about mental health. It can be physical health. It can be debt. It can be all the things that will affect a student's health and well-being.
I used to get a monthly dose of chemotherapy and a week-long prescription of steroids, and it was the steroids that really affected me. They made me tired, depressed, just moody, hungry, weak as well. My joints would always crack badly when I was on them, so I would just spend that week kind of in the flat just by myself, just getting on with the uni work. That was surprisingly was when I did most of my uni work. On top of that, every 3 months I had to have a procedure called a lumbar puncture, which is basically, and then where they take a sample of my spinal fluid and also inject chemotherapy there. Basically just as a preventative thing to prevent the cancer from spreading to my spinal fluid. And that was the one that really knocked me out for quite a while. I would have to stay in hospital and be rehydrated, I would get sick. I
wasn't getting on with a lot of my classmates at that point because I was very different from a lot of my classmates. I also had a tendency to just say what I thought and they didn't like that. So I had all that stress going on and I got nothing.
Coming to university in the first place is one of those major life transitions where your self-concept really has to do a lot of adjusting to take account of the new circumstances that you find in, the new attitudes that you encounter, you know, the way that people disagree with you, and you have to realise that the world isn't always on the same wavelength as you. You've got to adjust for all these sorts of things, and that's a big process in its own right. And then for something completely untoward to happen on top of that, it's just too much for some people's systems, and that's when this dis-ease can occur.
It's still hard, and I think you will never be able to like really get over it, because it still be part of your life. But I think the life just become more livable.
I've gotten through it now, yeah. I mean, like, I'm not crying about it now, if that makes sense, which, to be honest, I'm very surprised I'm not. Because I still remember the 9th of January every year. I still remember the 10th of August every year. Even though it's 5 years later, I'm never going to forget. And I'll always remember that November. Like, none of those dates are ever going to slip my mind.
I do remember when I was in hospital, I met a guy. He started after me. He started about a couple of months after me. So obviously he came to me and asked me what treatment was like. So I just told him. I was very honest with him. I was very upfront. I told him it does get hard. It is sore. You will cry. You'll feel like. I used to get suicidal thoughts when I was on the steroids, and I was like, you will get depressed. But the one thing to remember is that you will be fine. You do get better.
Challenging life events are just a part of life, but it's how we support people to manage them when they've got a whole variety of competing and compelling demands on them.
If there is a problem which you can fix with time or money, then it's not a problem, because you can still fix it.
It can never be as bad as it has been. I've never not experienced something as bad as what it has been. So in that case, it's fine. Why worry, so to speak.
One of the biggest preventers of people seeking help for issues with their emotional well-being or their mental health is a lack of compassion for themselves. And sometimes that lack of compassion comes from unfair comparisons. They look at someone else and think, well, that's worse than what happened to me.
Feeling that way certainly doesn't make you mad. It certainly doesn't make you psychologically disturbed in a way that indicates anything about your personality or indicates that you're always going to be that way, or indicates that you're never going to get better from it, that that's somehow a fixed characteristic of you. Absolutely not.
I think if we had an atmosphere and an environment that allowed for people to be more compassionate to themselves and to seek care, then hopefully there would be a lot less of the severe mental health issues amongst young people.
I suppose where there's positive coverage and where things are kind of brought to the fore, maybe, if there is just more coverage of mental health issues in general, that's probably gives some sense of reassurance that I'm not alone. I don't need to feel ashamed of having this. But yeah, if you do see some kind of poor coverage of mental health issues, where maybe people are being made fun of for strange behaviour, for example, then maybe you're going to think or be a bit more reluctant, I suppose, to admit to your own problems.
I don't think that there's been a time when the pressures on adolescents and young people have been as great, and the opportunities for bullying and the lack of respite from it that social media provides is one aspect of how social media and the development of all these advanced communication systems are affecting young people. And the other is the opportunity that it would have to promote attitudes towards mental health. And there is a lot of effort being put into destigmatising mental health issues to promote young people's emotional well-being, to look at the factors that come together to support the maintenance of good emotional well-being. But I'm not sure that we've come as far as sometimes we think we have, because there is still a reluctance for people to speak openly about issues with emotional well-being or mental health.
I would say it's getting more varied, the coverage, which that in itself is a positive thing. I think a lot more conditions are talked about, things that used to be really peripheral, like OCD and things like that. It probably is a lot more discussed, I think, in a positive way than it used to be. I think there's more awareness of conditions. I think there's been a lot of celebrities as well have spoken out about problems with depression, problems with anxiety, admitting to having nervous breakdowns or things like that. So there's probably not the same amount of stigma, to discuss it as an issue.
listen to yourself. Learn to listen to yourself and learn to trust that even what you think you don't want to know might be the best thing for you to know.